Well, good evening, anyone who's tuned in for this. I'm going to make this a one-take presentation, so prepare for it not to be particularly followable, but I hope you'll stick with it anyway. I'm limiting the commitment I put into uploads or posts currently because of fatigue, and knowing that whenever I attempt to make serious efforts on those things in this kind of state, it greatly aggravates it. So please forgive any going to use a word I used recently, no connotation intended, decrement. In which case, I mean that my decrement now relative to my normal performance level. Now I'm uploading to Gifted Advocacy tonight because recently the issues that inspired me to start this channel have been I don't want to use the word revived, but brought back into the forefront. And these issues are not what people in general think they were. And I'm including many gifted people. Again, I am not myself a gifted person. I would call myself close enough to it that I can spot it when I see it, and also that I get enough of the chaff that is directed at actual gifted people thrown my way by people who I'm close enough to it that I'm mistaken for gifted, and I get the same kind of negative energy that's frequently directed at the actually gifted people. Now, one thing that comes from the negative energy that is frequently directed at actual gifted people and near gifted people is this something that these misconceptions that others, I'm going to say others this time, have, or you can talk about internalized gifted phobia that makes them get so anxious to deny that they're in that group that they actually find a way to ungifted themselves. Not going that far with it. I'm talking about the clearly non-gifted, where have these misconceptions about the gifted that have such a negative impact on the gifted and some near gifteds that they want to escape from that attention entirely, and to the extent that they will disavow even the concept of it, which is part of the syndrome, the sociological syndrome against the gifted population. If they could be who they were, and this would to a large extent involve grouping together, because that's the only way that they can mesh properly. If you have people with severely different abilities, they're not going to have the same engagement rate, and they will not be able to have a continuum of exchange. There should be better interplay between people with different planes of performance, but that is not the most conducive to the development of the person of either level. A person with an IQ of 145 should be engaged with another person with an IQ between 140 and 150 for both of them to get a good benefit from it. If you pair a person with an IQ of 145 with a person of an IQ of 180, there's a mismatch there. It's better than having the person with an IQ of 180 engaging with a person with an IQ of 130, 120, or just really low. But ideally, the person with an IQ of 180 should have like a person of upwards of 170 for an ideal interplay, an ideal exchange. That's for development purposes. There's not enough people that high to expect to have that contact on a daily basis. It's important to have good interchange with people from a broader IQ cohort. That's not the right use of the word cohort. It has nothing to do with birth year there. But if you want to view, the abscissa on the bell curve, you'd want to have better interplay with the group that you're more likely to meet than the one that's most appropriate. I have to pause this, man. I've lost my place. Okay, now if going back to people who are non-gifted enough that they have no first-hand insight. They haven't had peak experiences themselves, and they haven't been in close enough contact with true gifted people long enough to get any actual witness insights into what would be a valid statement of what a gifted person's needs would have been. They therefore rely exclusively on completely second-hand information that they therefore cannot falsify nor vet. But they take it as they either they have two choices. They can just discard it as irrelevant, and maybe they could think to themselves, well, I really can't discern whether this is valid or not, so I'm going to ignore it. And that's what some of them probably do. But there's the other ones. They're going to say, this is the best source of information available to me, and I'm going to treat it as being, quote unquote, better than no source of so-called information, which is like, if the only thing you've read since you've gotten on social media about the form of the planet Earth, I shouldn't have said the word planet, or even the fact that whether it's a planet or not, is that you're reading nothing but the words from flat earthers, and you would deem that as a justification for concluding, well, they got it wrong the first time. We now know the Earth really is flat. And I don't really know because I haven't checked the opposite side yet, but I'm going to place my faith in the prevalence of these reports and I'm going to take that as being reliable. This is the same basis on which one would have accepted just secondhand reports about what gifted people would prefer as being defaultly accurate, because that's all that was run in front of you, and you're going to go with it because you don't want to just confess that you don't know. This is another important and bad bias of people, is the idea of admitting ignorance is worse than getting rid of it. I know I didn't say that right. Admitting ignorance is worse than just, all right. I'm having a very non-gifted moment today, as I said. This is why I'm not doing anything special. I have to respond to this in the moment before it evaporates. This is why I'm getting on at all. Confessing to ignorance is just beyond their ability. What's the alternative? The alternative is to deny it and just to talk off the top of your head to sustain the impression that you don't believe yourself to be ignorant. Not going to try to word that the proper way. But this is the bias that leads to the perpetuation of just the common myths and misconceptions of what's appropriate to do with the so-called gifted people. Now, another problem is that gifted people recoil I don't know even if gifted is the right word to use. I don't have an alternative word to use for it. This is just an available word that I'm working with because it's the one that's there. I didn't invent any one that was better yet. I'd rather get it from the source. But failing that, I'm using a handle for describe the group that I'm talking about. That they don't want to be labeled at all. They would rather just what's the word, blend in and be invisible or deny that they were a thing than to, and this again is because the only so-called accommodations that have been brought out pretty much right, that you could pick them out of the movie Idiocracy, the one so-called gifted person in that movie being Joe Bowers. And his reward for being gifted was that he was to resolve their world's entire set of problems within 1 week. And that's a type of what could be said or misconceptions about gifted people, but that are secondhand by those who have no common ground with them whatsoever and simply put all stock in hearsay. This is going to be continued on a second video as the length of this one is now approaching the limit. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.